Okay, so what we're going to do today is we're going to go through a combination VLOOKUP match. I happen to really like this formula. I used it for many years when I was in marketing analysis. It came in very handy because some of the other formulas that we used just weren't working. And we decided, or at least one of my coworkers introduced me to this combination, and I loved it. I found different ways to use it whenever I could. Okay, so one thing to note is that I'm in Microsoft Excel right now because Google Sheets is kind of giving some kind of an error message. I'm hoping they fix that soon because I do like Google Sheets. But you can use this formula in either one. Like I said, I used it for years, but I haven't used it for years in Excel, and it works just as well, if not better, in Google Sheets. So let's go ahead. All right, first data set we have here are merchandise lines. These are taken from an economic census that go from, or it actually started at, I think, 1999 all the way to 2015. And this is something similar to what I used to use, where we get all these numbers and we'd have to pull the numbers we need and put it in the sheet that we created. So as I mentioned here, these are the different merchandise lines. You have music and videos, food, beer and wine, computer hardware, computer software. One thing I did add was I did add category code, and I'll explain why I did that later on. But in the original sheet, we did have some specific notation that basically said some of the data was either not applicable or not available, or the sample was just way too small for it to count. So what I wound up doing is that for the ones that were way too small for it to count, I just put them as 001. These numbers, by the way, are in millions of dollars. So right here we're looking at total electronic shopping is $433,692 million, which is basically $433 billion. So I put this down to like $1. And the ones that were not available, I just basically put those down. These came out as batches. I just put them to 0, just so I can differentiate between them should they ever come up. Okay, so this is our sheet, and what I wanted to do was that I wanted to pull out certain information from this sheet to populate this sheet. Now, the categories, as I mentioned, the categories here are clothing, clothing, footwear, other. So I made that category list, and I put that category list here because I'm going to be using it in my VLOOKUP and MATCH formula. I also have factors because, as I mentioned, we're talking about the entire sector for the country in the census. So what we're doing for this purpose is, for example, if we work for a company, the company, marketing director actually found that these are different factors, or this is the percentage, roughly, of business that this particular factor did for the company, that I'm going to actually go ahead and come up with those numbers. But first, let's go into the VLOOKUP, and then we can move on. Okay, first thing we're going to do is we're going to go VLOOKUP. Excuse me. Okay. All right. First argument. So what we're going to do is we're going to look up B3, which is the clothing footwear. For this one, because I'm going to be basically scaling it down, I'm going to lock the column, but not the row. So VLOOKUP, we're looking at that particular formula. Alright, so now we're going to go and we're going to look, the second parameter of VLOOKUP is the table array. So the table array we're going to be looking at is from here, B2, all the way over, this is a pretty long list, all the way over to AJ2. And again, we're going to lock this completely. Alright, now where it says the column index number, this is where we use the match function. So we'll match Okay, the lookup value that we want to look for in this case is D2, which is the column title. So we have here D2. What we're going to do again is that we're going to actually lock the row this time and not the column. Let me move that over. And then what we're going to do is we're going to go back to the sheet, and it's going to look for that column name among all of these column names. So we're going to just highlight this particular row. Okay, and again we're going to lock it. Again, because we're looking to match that column name, we have to just highlight the rows. That's what match requires. Finally, usually, some people leave this blank. I like to be explicit. So what I do is I basically put match, exact match. Same thing goes for the VLOOKUP. So now that we've got the column number and everything in the match function, we're going to actually put false because I want an exact. Okay, and there we have it. We have 52,128,000 as our number. So we can go ahead and check that. Let's see, we got 2015 e-commerce for men's clothing. So this is right here. This is clothing F for e-commerce, 52,128. So we're good. So what we're going to do is I'm going to go ahead and expand this over. And of course I'm going to double check. Let's check 2011 clothing just to make sure. Clothing, here we go. That's it, 28,196. So the formula works great here, but remember, this is the entire e-commerce. You're going to have to multiply it by that factor. So what we're going to do is we're going to take this and we're going to multiply it by that factor. And in this case, we are going to, again, lock the column but not the row. Okay? So when we do that, we actually come up with, this is a number, so it's 198 million versus 52 billion. And when we do this, we're going to come up with those numbers as well. And of course, I already had these formulas pre-populated, so I could take a look. It was part of the whole analysis. So now we're going to actually go ahead and drop this down. And here we have it. All the 2015, 2014, 2013, all the way down. These are all the numbers for these particular company merchandise lines, including, and then everything's multiplied by the factor. So this is we can go ahead and spot check those, but we already spot checked a couple of them and everything looks good. What we're going to do now is we're going to move this formula over into this particular column. Take a look at what happens here. See? In this case, again, it takes a look at the category, which is over here, and then we also have this L2, everything shifted over just as it's supposed to, and we have, this is the number right here. We're going to switch everything over. Great. So there we have it. We could have basically just, just to double check, we could have just deconstructed the formula, taken out this one right here, just taking this out, and for example, men's footwear, or the clothing footwear for 2006 e-commerce, just take a look at that, just to double check. 2006 e-commerce, there you go, 12887, which is exactly what we have here. So let's put that back. And there's there's our table. Now we can go ahead and analyze and see, okay, 2002, based on what, say your marketing or your boss said that this is the comparable time. 2002, it looks like the total, we were more of the total, and then basically everybody started catching up. So this is just a very simple example of how VLOOKUP can really help you to deconstruct a huge amount of data and put it in and put it in your own tables however you want it. Of course, it's always good to spot check and to make sure that you are choosing exact match. Don't leave it to the computer or to the program to choose for you. Be explicit and choose exact match, because you're dealing with numbers and you're dealing with this particular title, which is easy to get that title. And then once it looks at that title in the table, it'll just pull the information. Make sure that your titles match exactly. This is very sensitive. If it doesn't match exactly, for example, if you deleted that, if you didn't have the e-commerce and you just had e-commerce, it wouldn't work. So what we're going to do is, just again, go ahead, take a look, double check, make sure everything's okay, and enjoy the formula. It is a lot of fun, and it is a very powerful formula, and I guarantee you're going to find plenty of ways to try and use it. All right? Have a good one and have fun. Enjoy.